The massive chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed under artificial stars. Representatives from 247 species filled the curved seating rows, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that hummed with inner light to massive creatures that needed gravity dampeners just to attend. In the middle section, Jiwoo sat quietly in her designated seat, reviewing the day's agenda on her data tablet. She had been Earth's representative for 6 years now, and she knew how these sessions typically went. The council was discussing trade routes through the Outer Rim. Ambassador Krell, a tall reptilian creature from the Villione Republic, stood at the speaking platform. His scales shimmered green and gold under the lights as he gestured with his clawed hands. He was proposing a new taxation system that would benefit the wealthier core worlds, while placing additional burdens on developing colonies. Gi-woo had reviewed the numbers. The system was deeply unfair, and she prepared her notes to speak against it. When her turn came, Jiwoo rose and walked to the platform. She presented her analysis calmly, showing how the taxation would harm smaller colonies and ultimately damage galactic trade. Several younger species representatives nodded as she spoke, but when she finished, Krell dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand. High Counselor Thren, the ancient crystalline being who presided over all sessions, called for a vote without further discussion. The taxation system passed easily. The core worlds had more voting power. This was normal. Gi-woo had learned over the years that human proposals rarely gained traction in the council. Earth was a junior member, only 40 years in the galactic community. Humans held little political power and no significant military force compared to the ancient species. What humans did have was something else entirely. Across the galaxy, in thousands of locations, humans worked. In the dark spaces between stars, Daeho floated outside Relay Station 15. His suit protected against radiation that would kill most species within minutes. He was performing maintenance on the hyperspace beacon that allowed ships to navigate this sector. The work was dangerous and tedious. The previous engineer, a Villione technician, had quit after 3 days, calling the job impossible. Daeho had been doing it for 8 years. He knew every circuit, every power relay, every quirk of the ancient machinery. He had even improved the system, increasing its efficiency by 30%. His report detailing these improvements sat unread in the station authority archives. On the agricultural station, Urbine Kepler 44 to be, dozens of humans managed the vast hydroponic farms that fed 17 worlds. They worked 16-hour shifts, carefully monitoring crop rotations and nutrient levels. Other species found the work boring and beneath their dignity. Humans found it necessary. Without these farms, billions would starve. The human workers had introduced new growing techniques that doubled yields. But when they submitted their findings to the Agricultural Board, the report was credited to the station's Villione supervisor instead, in the dangerous asteroid mines of the Cora Belt. Human workers extracted rare minerals that powered everything from medical equipment to starship engines. The radiation levels were borderline lethal. Most species refused to work there at all. Humans took the jobs, sent money home to Earth, and died sometimes when equipment failed. There were memorials on Earth listing their names. There were no memorials in Council space. Commander Hin stood on the bridge of the defense vessel Harmony, a joint species ship assigned to protect trade routes from pirates. Her crew was mixed, with humans serving alongside Velliones, Crete, and Erothian warriors. Officially, a Villione admiral commanded the fleet. Unofficially, when real trouble came, that admiral always asked for Hayen's tactical advice. She had saved the fleet 17 times in 3 years. She had received 3 official commendations, always worded carefully to credit the Villione command structure first. This was humanity's role in the Galactic Council. They fixed what broke. They worked where others would not. They solved problems that seemed unsolvable. They did not complain about the lack of recognition because they believed in something larger than themselves. They believed the Galactic Council represented the dream of unity, of different species working together for a better future. That belief began to crack on a Tuesday afternoon. Council's standard time. The session had been routine until Ambassador Krell requested the floor for what he called a matter of importance. Thren granted him permission to speak. Krell's voice boomed through the chamber's speakers as he addressed the assembled representatives. I propose we review Earth's membership status in this council. 40 years have passed since their admission, yet what have humans truly contributed? They hold no military power. They possess no great wealth. Their technology is adequate at best. They occupy a council seat that could be given to a more deserving species. Gyu felt her hands grip the armrests of her seat. Around the chamber, some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded in agreement. Krell continued, warming to his subject. Humans have made themselves useful, certainly. They perform maintenance work and fill labor positions. They are the galaxy's janitors, reliable but unremarkable. Perhaps we should create a new category of membership for species who serve rather than lead. Earth could be the first such member, with appropriate reductions in council privileges. Laughter rippled through sections of the chamber. Not cruel laughter exactly, the kind of amusement that came from hearing something slightly inappropriate, but also slightly true. Giwu rose to her feet, requesting the right to respond. Thren acknowledged her with a gesture. Ambassador Krell's words do not reflect the reality of human contributions to this council. Giwu said, keeping her voice steady. Humans maintain 70% of the hyperspace relay network. We staff the majority of agricultural stations. Our doctors work in hospitals across the galaxy. Our engineers keep critical infrastructure functioning. Our soldiers serve in defense fleets. We have asked for nothing but the opportunity to contribute to this community, Krell interrupted her. Exactly my point. Service positions. Labor. Nothing that influences the true direction of galactic civilization. Thren raised a crystalline appendage. The Council appreciates Earth's service. However, Ambassador Krell raises valid questions about representation and power balance. We will take his proposal under advisement. This session is concluded. Jiwoo stood at the speaking platform, her prepared response undelivered, as the council chamber emptied around her. The session's recording would be broadcast across the galaxy within the hour. Billions of humans would hear themselves called janitors by a council they served faithfully. Something quiet and profound shifted in that moment, though no one recognized it yet. The disrespect had always been there, hidden beneath polite words and formal protocols. Now it was spoken aloud, made official, met with laughter, and approved with silence. Giwu gathered her materials slowly. She looked around the empty chamber one last time. Then she walked toward the exit, already composing her report to Earth. She would use careful, diplomatic language. She would present the facts without emotion. But deep in her mind, a question had formed that she could not dismiss. What exactly were humans doing here? Across the galaxy, that same question was beginning to echo. 3 months passed after the council session. The recording had spread across every human colony and settlement. People watched Ambassador Krell call them janitors. They heard the laughter. They saw High Counselor Thren dismiss Jiwoo's response without consideration. The reaction was not what anyone expected. There were no protests, no angry speeches, no demands for apology. Instead, something quieter happened, something that began in individual conversations and grew into a collective understanding without any formal coordination. On Relay Station 15, Daeho finished his shift as always. He performed the final system checks, documented everything in meticulous detail, and then submitted a single-page letter to the station authority. It was professional and polite. He thanked them for the opportunity to serve. He was resigning effective in 30 days. No reason given, the station authority director of Velion named Court read the resignation with mild annoyance, but little concern. Daeho was excellent at his job, but surely finding a replacement would be simple enough. The work was just maintenance after all. Court posted the position opening and began reviewing applications. He received no applications. Not a single one. More concerning, 3 other human engineers at the station submitted identical resignations the same day, then 5 more the next week. Within 30 days, every human worker at Relay Station 15 had resigned. Court was forced to promote Velion technicians into the positions. They had the training, the certifications, all the official qualifications. What they did not have was the experience or the intuitive understanding of systems that Deho and his team had developed over years of hands-on work. The relay stations. Efficiency dropped by 15% in the first month. Small problems that Deho would have fixed in minutes now took hours to diagnose. The Velion technicians followed every protocol perfectly, but the machinery seemed to resist them. It was not sabotage. The humans had left everything in good working order, with detailed documentation. But the systems were complex, modified and improved over years by human engineers who had not bothered to document every small change because everyone just knew how things worked. The same pattern repeated across the galaxy. At the agricultural station near Kepler 44b, the human workers submitted their resignations in a single group. The station manager panicked and offered them increased pay, better quarters, anything to stay. They declined politely and left as soon as their contracts allowed. The replacement workers from various species tried their best, but crop yields dropped immediately. The humans had developed specific techniques for each crop, small adjustments to nutrients and light that made enormous differences. These techniques existed nowhere in official records. They were learned through experience and shared between workers. During breaks, Commander Heian requested discharge from the defense fleet, along with every human under her command. The Velion admiral tried to refuse, then tried to convince her to stay. Heian was respectful, but firm. She submitted 40 pages of tactical documentation, training protocols, and strategic analysis. Everything official was covered. What she could not document was the instinct developed through actual combat, the ability to read a situation and react faster than conscious thought allowed. 2 months after she left, her former fleet encountered pirates in the Outer Rim. The new Velion commander followed every protocol from Heian's documentation. He did everything right according to the manual. 3 ships were lost and 17 crew members died. Heian would have seen the trap and avoided it entirely. But that kind of tactical intuition could not be written down. The exodus continued. Human doctors resigned from hospitals. Human technicians left power stations. Human mediators withdrew from diplomatic services. Human teachers departed from interspecies academies. Human miners left the radiation zones. Human researchers abandoned their projects. Human artists pulled their work from galleries. There was no coordination in the traditional sense. No human leader gave orders. Earth's government made no official declarations. But humans talked to each other. They shared the recording of the council session. They discussed what it meant to work hard for 40 years and be called janitors. They asked themselves what they were doing there. And individually, one by one, they all arrived at the same conclusion. They were not wanted. Not really. They were useful, but not valued. They served, but were not respected. And life was too short to spend it where you were not wanted. Jiwoo remained at council headquarters longer than most. She archived everything. 40 years of human contributions, reports, proposals, and communications. She organized it all carefully, backed it up in multiple locations, and prepared a comprehensive summary. Then she submitted her resignation to High Counselor Thren personally. Thren received her in the private chamber reserved for senior council business. The crystalline being's internal lights pulsed slowly, indicating curiosity or perhaps concern. Your departure is unexpected, Ambassador Jiwoo. Earth has been a valued member of this council. Jiwoo kept her expression neutral. Has it? Or has Earth been a useful servant? There is a difference, High Counselor. Ambassador Krell's words were inappropriate. The council does not share his views. The council laughed at his words, and when I attempted to respond, you ended the session. Actions matter more than claims, High Counselor. Earth has served this council faithfully for 40 years. We have asked for nothing but respect and fair treatment. We have received neither. Thren's lights pulsed faster. This is about representation? We can discuss increasing Earth's voting weight. This is not about votes or power. This is about dignity. We will no longer work where we are not wanted. Gi-Woo placed her resignation documents on the crystalline surface that served as Thren's desk. Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for the opportunity to serve. We now choose to serve ourselves. She left before Thren could respond. Her shuttle departed Council headquarters the next day. She was the last human to leave. Earth's ambassadors withdrew from Council chambers across the galaxy. Human colonies began recalling their citizens. The process was orderly, careful, and thorough. Humans did not abandon their posts without training replacements as much as possible. They documented their work meticulously. They fulfilled their contractual obligations to the letter, and then they left. 6 months after the council session, 99% of humans working outside Earth's sphere of influence had returned home. The 1% who remained were in situations where immediate departure would cause deaths. And humans would not let people die to make a point. But even they were working toward departure as soon as safe. Transitions could be arranged. The Galactic Council barely noticed at first. They were busy with political matters, trade negotiations, territorial disputes. The absence of humans in day-to-day operations seemed like a minor inconvenience. Other species could do the work. The jobs were not that complex. Humans were reliable, yes, but surely not irreplaceable. Daeho returned to Earth and bought a small farm in Korea. Other engineers from the relay stations joined him. They grew vegetables and raised chickens. When former colleagues from the station authority tried to contact him, offering enormous salaries to return, he responded with polite messages declining the offers. He did not explain further. He did not need to. Hyun took a position training Earth's defense forces. Her expertise was suddenly valuable at home. She built a small house near the ocean and spent her evenings watching the sunset. Something she had not been able to do in years of space service. Ji-Woo became an advisor to Earth's government, helping coordinate the return of millions of citizens from across the galaxy. She archived every communication from council members asking about humanity's plans. She responded to none of them. The time for talking was over. The council had made its position clear. Humanity was done explaining itself, on Earth and its colonies. Humans settled back into lives focused on themselves and each other. They built, they created. They helped their own communities. They no longer sent their best and brightest to maintain someone else's civilization. The galaxy would learn what that meant soon enough. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the first major relay station failed completely. It was Relay Station 23 in the Orion sector. The hyperspace beacon that allowed ships to navigate through that region of space simply stopped functioning. Ships that were mid-jump emerged from hyperspace hundreds of light years off course. 3 vessels were lost entirely, their crews never found. Trade routes through the sector collapsed overnight. The station authority sent their best Valion engineers to fix it. They spent 6 weeks studying the problem. The machinery was old, but well-maintained. All the official documentation was present. Everything should have worked, but the system remained dead. Finally, one of the engineers discovered handwritten notes tucked inside an access panel. They were in Korean. When translated, they described a specific sequence for restarting the beacon after certain types of failures. The sequence was not in any manual. Daeho had figured it out through trial and error over years and had written the notes for his own reference. The engineers tried the sequence. The beacon came back online. But by then, the economic damage was done. 17 commercial shipping companies had gone bankrupt. 2 colonies had suffered food shortages. The Orion sector's economy would take years to recover. Similar failures began cascading across the galaxy. Relay stations that had worked perfectly for decades started malfunctioning in strange ways. The problems were always fixable. But the solutions required knowledge that existed only in the minds of human engineers who were no longer there. Replacement engineers struggled with systems that had been subtly modified and improved over years without official documentation. Transit times between systems doubled, then tripled. Trade slowed dramatically. The cost of shipping goods increased by 400%. Colonies that depended on imports began rationing supplies. On the agricultural stations, the situation was even worse. The crops started failing within months of the humans leaving. At first, the replacement workers thought it was bad luck or disease. Then they realized the humans had been managing incredibly complex rotations and nutrient balances that prevented soil depletion and pest buildup. Without that management, the problems that humans had been quietly preventing for years all emerged at once. The station near Keltler 44B saw its yield drop by 60%. The manager finally reviewed the human workers' reports that had been filed and ignored for years. The reports detailed everything, but reading about techniques and actually implementing them were very different things. The replacement workers tried to follow the instructions, but subtle timing and intuition made the difference between success and failure. Crops continued to die. 17 worlds that depended on imported food began experiencing shortages. Prices skyrocketed. Rationing was implemented. People started going hungry. The council authorized emergency funding for new agricultural development, but starting new farms took years. People were hungry now. In the Cora Belt, the mining operations shut down entirely. Without human workers willing to brave the radiation, production stopped. The mine owners tried offering massive salaries to other species. A few took the jobs, but the casualty rate was horrific. Species that had not evolved Earth's particular combination of radiation, tolerance, and risk acceptance died quickly in the mines. After 37 deaths in 2 months, operations were permanently closed. Suddenly, the rare minerals that powered medical equipment and starship engines were in extreme shortage. Prices increased 20-fold. Hospitals ran out of supplies. Ship construction stopped. The galactic economy, which had seemed so robust, began to fracture. The military situation deteriorated rapidly. Commander Hyan's former fleet suffered 3 more devastating losses to pirates. The Valiant commanders were competent and followed all proper tactical doctrine. But doctrine assumed standard situations. Pirates did not fight by the rules. They used tactics that required improvisation and instinctive responses. The human commanders had excelled at this. Their replacements did not defend satellites around council worlds began malfunctioning. It turned out humans had been performing round-the-clock maintenance that everyone else had assumed was automated. The satellites were old systems that required constant adjustment. Without that care, they degraded quickly. Entire worlds found themselves vulnerable. A major pirate attack on a council core. World succeeded for the first time in 80 years. 40,000 civilians died. The investigation revealed the defense network had been operating at 30% efficiency due to human workers' absence. Then the plague came. It started on the Velion homeworld. In the capital city where Ambassador Krell lived, a simple viral infection, normally not serious. But it spread with terrifying speed through hospitals and care facilities. Within weeks, thousands were dead. Within months, it was a pandemic threatening the entire planet. The Velion medical establishment struggled to contain it. They had excellent doctors and advanced technology. What they lacked was the basic disease control protocols that human doctors had introduced. But that had never been formally adopted into Velion medical practice. Humans had been working in Velion hospitals for decades, quietly implementing sterilization techniques and isolation, procedures that prevented exactly this kind of outbreak, without humans constantly maintaining those practices. The hospitals had gradually returned to their old ways. No one had noticed because the humans had been preventing outbreaks before they started. Now, there were no humans to prevent anything, and the Velion medical system was overwhelmed. Ambassador Krell himself fell ill. From his hospital bed, he sent an urgent message to Earth requesting human medical assistance. The message was delivered to Earth's government. It was read, acknowledged, and filed without response. Krell sent 3 more messages, each more desperate. All were acknowledged and filed. Finally, a response came from an official in Earth's health ministry. It was professionally written and very polite. It thanked Ambassador Krell for reaching out. It noted that Earth's medical resources were currently focused on Earth's population. It wished him a full recovery. It offered no help Krell survive the plague, but 2 million Velions did not. The population would remember that Earth had been asked for help and had declined to give it. What they would not understand until much later was that this was simply humanity returning the treatment they had received. Polite acknowledgement with no actual assistance? It was exactly how the Council had treated human proposals and concerns for 40 years. The economic collapse spread. Trade between Council worlds dropped to levels not seen in 2 centuries. Entire industries vanished overnight. Species that had built their economies on galactic commerce found themselves suddenly isolated and struggling. 17 member species declared bankruptcy and withdrew from the Council entirely. "Hi, Counselor," Thren called emergency sessions weekly. The Council authorized massive spending on training programs to replace human workers. They hired teachers from dozens of species to train new engineers, doctors, farmers, and technicians. But what humans had learned through years of experience could not be taught in weeks or months. Some skills required human-specific traits: their endurance, their willingness to take risks, their ability to see patterns and improvise solutions. The Council slowly realized they were not just missing workers. They were missing the connecting tissue that had held galactic civilization together. Humans had served as neutral mediators between hostile species, facilitating trade that would otherwise never happen. They had worked in mixed-species crews, bridging cultural gaps. They had taken jobs in places so dangerous or unpleasant that no one else would go there, keeping critical infrastructure running. Humans had not been janitors. They had been the foundation. And without a foundation, everything was collapsing. Deho sat on his porch on Earth, watching the sunset over his farm. His old supervisor from the station authority had sent another message today, begging him to return. The salary offer was now 10 times what he had earned before. Deho deleted the message without responding. He had crops to tend. Hune trained young officers in Earth's Defense Academy. News of the disaster in her former fleet had reached her. She felt sad for the crews who had died, but not guilty. She had left detailed documentation. She had offered to train replacements. The Council had assured her it was unnecessary. They had been wrong. Giwu coordinated the steady stream of communications arriving from Council worlds. Hundreds per day now, begging humanity to return. Each one was carefully archived. A few received polite responses thanking them for their interest. None received promises of help. Earth was building again, but building for itself now. Humans were constructing new relay networks connecting their own colonies. They were expanding agricultural production for their own needs. They were developing their own technology and culture without constantly adapting to others' requirements. For the first time in 40 years, humanity was focused on itself, and it was thriving. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Respect could not be demanded after it had been denied. Service could not be taken for granted. And people who were called janitors might one day decide to stop cleaning up everyone else's mess. 3 years after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council was dying. Only 103 species remained as active members. The rest had withdrawn, unable to maintain the costs of participation while their economies collapsed. The Grand Council chamber, built to hold representatives from hundreds of worlds, now sat mostly empty. High Counselor Thren presided over sessions where more seats were vacant than filled. The hyperspace relay network was operating at 30% of its former capacity. Some regions of space were completely cut off, their relay stations broken beyond the ability of current engineers to repair. Colonies in those regions were isolated, left to survive on their own resources, or die trying. Food production from the agricultural stations had dropped to critical levels. Famines were widespread. 42 worlds were experiencing severe food shortages. Riots and civil unrest were common. Some governments had collapsed entirely under the pressure. The medical crisis continued unabated. The Valion plague had been contained finally, but only after killing 5 million people. New diseases emerged on other worlds, spreading through hospitals that no longer maintained the basic protocols humans had introduced. The death toll climbed steadily. The economy was in ruins. Galactic trade was a fraction of what it had been. The currency system was collapsing. Some species had reverted to barter. The prosperity that had defined the golden age of the Council was a memory. Ambassador Krell's fate had become a symbol across the galaxy. After recovering from the plague, he was recalled to his homeworld and put on trial. The charges were vague, but the intent was clear. Someone needed to be blamed for the disaster. His speech insulting humanity was played repeatedly during the trial. He was found guilty of crimes against the Valion. People and sentenced to permanent exile. He sent one final message to Earth before disappearing into obscurity. It was a personal apology to Jiwoo, Daeho-han, and every human he had insulted. The message was sincere and heartfelt. It acknowledged his arrogance and blindness. It took full responsibility. It asked for nothing in return. Jiwoo read it and filed it with the others. She felt no satisfaction in his downfall. Vengeance was not the point. The point had been dignity, and dignity did not require anyone's suffering. But Krell's apology was just one voice. The council as a whole still struggled to understand what had gone wrong. Many representatives believed the crisis was temporary, a rough patch that would resolve itself. They continued to blame external factors: bad luck, economic cycles, political instability. They could not or would not see the real cause. A young Valonian researcher named Sek changed that. Sek was a social scientist studying interspecies relations. The collapse of the council had become her dissertation topic. She spent 18 months reviewing archives, analyzing communications, and interviewing anyone who would talk to her. She focused particularly on human interactions with the council over 40 years. What she discovered shocked her. She found human proposals for infrastructure improvements that had been dismissed without review. She found safety complaints from human workers that had been ignored. Complaints that predicted the exact failures now plaguing the galaxy. She found reports of human innovations and discoveries that had been attributed to other species. She found records of human cultural contributions that had been mocked or rejected. Most damning, she found the pattern. Over 40 years, humans had contributed more to the Council than any other species. They had asked for nothing but basic respect in return. They had received contempt instead, sometimes subtle, sometimes overt, but constant and grinding. The Council session with Ambassador Krell was not the cause of humanity's departure. It was merely the moment when humans collectively realized that respect would never come. The insult was the final proof of something they had suspected for years. Sek published her findings in a paper titled, "The Cost of Contempt: How the Galactic Council Lost Humanity." It spread across the remaining council networks within days. Every species read it. Every government discussed it. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The galaxy finally understood what it had done. The public reaction was swift. On dozens of worlds, protests demanded council reform. Citizens who had never met humans marched in support of their return. Governments that had dismissed human contributions for decades suddenly praised humanity's service. Species that had laughed at Krell's insult now condemned it, but the words rang hollow. Humanity had heard praise before, usually delivered while their actual proposals were ignored. Words without action meant nothing. High Counselor Thren read Sek's paper alone in her private chamber. The ancient being had led the council for 2 centuries. She had seen species rise and fall, peace and war, prosperity and poverty. She had always believed herself wise and fair. But Sek's paper forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. She had failed. She had noticed humans working tirelessly across the galaxy. She had seen their contributions. But she had also seen them as junior members, species that needed time to mature before taking larger roles. She had not realized that time and opportunity were not the same thing. She had given humans time, but never opportunity. She had accepted their service while denying them influence. She reviewed 40 years of council proceedings. She saw how human proposals were routinely dismissed or delayed. She saw how human concerns were treated as minor matters. She saw how human achievements were credited to others. She saw all of it clearly now. Too late. The crisis meetings became more desperate. The council authorized training programs, throwing resources at the problem. But 3 years in, it was clear that replacing human expertise would take decades, not years. Some skills might be impossible to replace. Human endurance in dangerous environments. Their pattern recognition in complex systems. their ability to mediate between hostile species. These traits had evolved over millennia on Earth. They could not be taught, council representatives began suggesting military action. Perhaps humanity could be forced to return. Perhaps their colonies could be threatened or blockaded. These suggestions were quickly dismissed. Humanity's military was smaller than the Council's remaining forces, but a war would be disastrous for everyone. More importantly, forcing humans to work was slavery, and even in their desperation, most Council members would not cross that line. Besides, a military force would not solve the actual problem. Even if humans could be forced back to their jobs, they would no longer work with the dedication and creativity they had shown before. Forced labor produced minimum effort, not excellence. The galaxy needed humans who cared about the work, and those humans were gone. Offers poured toward Earth daily. Massive salaries, political positions, guaranteed representation, anything to entice humans back. Every offer was acknowledged politely and declined. Earth's government released a simple statement: humanity is focused on its own development at this time. We wish the Galactic Council well. The message was professional and contained no anger or resentment. That somehow made it worse. Humanity was not punishing the Council. Humanity was simply indifferent to the Council's survival. After being treated as insignificant for 40 years, humans had internalized that assessment and withdrawn their significance. Deho received personal messages from former colleagues begging him to return. The offers were extraordinary: wealth, prestige, positions of authority. He responded to one from a Velion engineer he had actually liked with a simple message: "I'm happy here. I hope you find happiness too." He did not respond to the others. Hyun watched news reports of her former fleet's continued losses. She felt grief for the crews, but no responsibility. She had given the Council everything she had. They had tolerated her service while dismissing her insights. Now they faced the consequences of that choice. Gu coordinated Earth's response to the crisis with calm efficiency. She understood the Council's desperation. She felt sympathy for the innocent people suffering because of their leaders' failures. But sympathy was not obligation. Humans had obligations to themselves now, to the communities they had neglected while serving others. Still, the messages kept coming. Thousands per day. Pleas from governments, from organizations, from individuals. The Council was collapsing. People were dying. Entire civilizations were at risk. Would humanity really stand by and watch? Gi Wu read them all. She archived them carefully. And she waited. Not for the Council to suffer enough punishment was not the goal. She waited for something else. She waited for understanding. That understanding came from an unexpected source. High Counselor Thren requested a personal communication with Earth's government. Not a formal diplomatic contact, but a personal message. She had something to say, and she needed to say it directly. Earth's government granted the request. They had no reason to refuse. When Thren's message arrived, it contained just a few words. "I understand now. I am sorry. May I come to Earth?" High Counselor Thren's journey to Earth took for months. The hyperspace relay network was so degraded that even priority travel was slow and dangerous. She traveled alone in a small, unarmed vessel, refusing all offers of escort. This was not a diplomatic mission. This was personal. The vessel finally entered Earth's solar system on a clear spring morning. Earth's defense forces tracked her approach, but allowed her passage. They guided her to a landing facility near Seoul. No ceremony awaited her. No cameras or reporters, just 3 humans standing on the landing platform: Daeho, Gu, and Haeon. Thren emerged from her ship, her crystalline form moving slowly. She was ancient even by her species standards, and the journey had been difficult. The 3 humans watched her approach without expression. Finally, she stood before them and spoke. "I have come to apologize," she said. "Not as High Counselor, but as someone who failed you personally." Jiwoo nodded slightly. "We received your message. You are welcome here, Thren. But we should speak inside. This is not a conversation for a landing platform." They led her to a simple conference room in a government building. No grand halls or ornate decorations. Just a table, chairs, and windows overlooking the city. They sat, and Thren began to speak. I read sex paper. I reviewed 40 years of records. I saw what we did to you. The dismissed proposals, the ignored complaints, the stolen credit. I saw how we took everything you gave and offered nothing in return but contempt. Her internal lights pulsed rapidly, indicating distress. I told myself I was being fair. I told myself you needed time to prove yourselves. I was wrong. You proved yourselves every day, and we refused to see it. Deho spoke for the first time. You saw us as janitors. Ambassador Krell said it, but you all believed it. We were useful, but beneath you. Yes, Thren admitted. We confused your willingness to serve with weakness. We mistook your patience for powerlessness. We thought because you did not demand glory, that you did not deserve respect. We were fools. Yun leaned forward. Why are you here, Thren? The council is dying. Your civilization is collapsing. Are you here to beg us to save you? No, Thren said quietly. I am here to tell you that you were right to leave. You gave us 40 years of faithful service, and we return that service with disrespect. You owe us nothing. If the council falls, it is no less than we deserve. The three humans exchanged glances. This was not what they had expected. Jiwoo spoke carefully. Then what do you want? I want you to know that some of us understand now. Too late, but we understand. And I want to ask, not as a counselor, but as someone who cares about all these species and people suffering right now, is there any path forward? Not back to how things were. That was broken. But forward to something better. Silence filled the room. Outside the window, the city of Seoul bustled with life. Humans going about their day, building their own future. Finally, Jiwoo spoke. We will not return to the council as it was. We will not be taken for granted again. But you are right about one thing. People are suffering. Not the politicians or the ambassadors who created this mess, but ordinary people who did nothing wrong. She paused. We are not cruel, Thren. We left to preserve our dignity, not to cause suffering. If there is a way to help that does not require us to sacrifice that dignity again, we will consider it. Deho nodded. But the conditions must be real. Not promises that will be forgotten when the crisis ends. Not temporary reforms that will revert when things improve. Actual, permanent change. Tell me what you need, Thren said. I will do everything in my power to make it happen. Over the next 3 days, they talked. Not just the four of them, but representatives from Earth's government. Leaders from human colonies, and even Sek, who was invited to participate via communication link. They discussed what a new relationship between humanity and the galaxy might look like. The terms were clear and non-negotiable. Human workers would return to help stabilize critical systems, but only as full partners with equal authority. A new council structure would be created where voting power was not based on military strength or wealth, but on contribution and cooperation. Every species would have genuine equal voice. A human memorial would be erected, listing every human who had died while serving the galaxy. Their sacrifices would be honored officially and permanently. The families of those who died would receive compensation, not as charity, but as recognition of debt owed. Most importantly, humanity would share its techniques and knowledge, but other species would have to learn to do the work themselves. The age of depending on human labor without appreciation was over. Humans would teach, mentor, and assist. But they would not carry the galaxy on their backs again. Thren agreed to every term. She returned to what remained of the council and presented the proposal. The debate was intense. Some species rejected the terms as too harsh. Others argued the council had no choice. Finally, the vote was called. The terms passed, barely. The transition took years. Deho returned to the relay stations, but this time with a team of engineers from multiple species who were there to learn, not just to assist. He taught them everything he knew, including the intuitive tricks and shortcuts that had never been documented. It was slower than working alone, but the students were dedicated. They understood now that they were not just learning a job, but preserving knowledge that had nearly been lost. Han took command of a reformed defense initiative. training officers from dozens of species in her tactical methods. She was given full authority, not just advisory status. Her students failed often at first, but she was patient. She showed them how to think creatively, how to trust instinct alongside doctrine. Slowly, they improved. G-Wu became the first chancellor of the reformed Galactic Council. The position was elected by equal vote of all member species. She served for 10 years, focusing on rebuilding the foundations of galactic cooperation on principles of mutual respect. It was exhausting work, but it was meaningful work. The galaxy did not recover quickly. The damage was too extensive, but it did recover, slowly and steadily. The relay networks were restored, though it took 8 years to return to full capacity. Food production increased as new agricultural techniques were shared openly and implemented carefully. Medical protocols were established and maintained. The economy stabilized. More importantly, the culture changed. The new generation of galactic citizens grew up learning about the human departure as a cautionary tale. They studied sex paper in schools. They visited the human memorial and read the names of those who had died in service. They understood that respect and dignity were not weaknesses, but the foundation of civilization 10 years after. Thren's visit to Earth. A ceremony was held at the human memorial station orbiting Earth. Representatives from every council species attended. Daeho, Giwu, and Haeon were there, older now but still vital. Thren attended as well, though she had stepped down from council leadership years before. The memorial was a massive crystalline structure, visible from Earth's surface on clear nights. Inside, the names of 847,000 humans who had died in galactic service were inscribed in permanent light. Each name was linked to their story, their contribution, their sacrifice. Sex stood before the memorial, no longer a young researcher, but a respected elder in her field. She had spent years documenting humanity's contributions and fighting to ensure they were remembered accurately. She spoke at the ceremony, her words broadcast across the galaxy. This memorial exists because we forgot to honor these people while they lived. We took their service for granted. We treated their sacrifices as insignificant. When they left, we finally understood what we had lost. Not just workers, but the moral center of our civilization. She paused, her voice heavy with emotion. Humanity taught us that dignity and respect are not gifts to be granted by the powerful to the weak. They are rights that belong to everyone who serves, who contributes, who tries to make things better. These 847,000 people died believing in the dream of galactic unity. We failed them. This memorial is our promise to never fail anyone that way again. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed slowly. Daeho stood looking at the names, finding the section where his old colleagues from the relay stations were listed. People who had died in accidents that could have been prevented if their safety reports had been read. He felt Jiwoo and Haeon join him. Was it worth it? Han asked quietly. All those years of service, all those lives lost. Did we accomplish anything? Jiwoo considered the question. They built something beautiful. It was flawed, and they paid a terrible price for those flaws. But they built it anyway. We left when the price became too high, and we were right to leave. We came back when we could return with dignity, and we were right to do that too. Their sacrifice was not wasted. It just took longer than it should have for anyone to understand its value. Daeho nodded. The galaxy is better now than it was. Not perfect, but better. That is worth something. They stood together in silence for a long moment, honoring the dead and the dream that had brought humanity to the stars in the first place. The dream had nearly died, but it had survived. Changed, tempered by hard lessons but alive.